I have some thoughts for you today. I was rattling on some content as I was creating for the podcast and some social media stuff and that kind of thing. And I would love to share some of the thoughts put together, unwritten, unscripted here first. Just to get your minds jogging, get your processing jogging, get your mind going. So one is I created a podcast last night. It released this morning. You can go listen to it, around deconstruction, my definition of deconstruction, how I'm using it in our spaces, the spaces that we're together in, and spiritual direction. And it's a little bit hard hitting for some folks. So I really get into it, what deconstruction is. The biggest thing that I took away from creating it, the things, of course, after recording it and editing it and listening to it and then releasing it, I thought of so many things that I could have put in it and so many other things that I could have said. And one of the biggest things that I want to say that I didn't say in like an outright and direct and clear way in that episode is that asking, so in the like within the, keep in mind like the context of what I'm talking about is defining deconstruction. And the thing that I wanted to say and didn't say, or desire to say now because I couldn't necessarily formulate it so explicitly in that episode, is that asking questions is not dangerous. Telling people that they cannot ask questions while holding a place of power in a community is extremely dangerous. So I just wanted to call that out. In the podcast episode, I delineate a little bit more between these folks that are calling out deconstruction, saying that it's dangerous, saying that it's like to like stay away from it, calling out people that are deconstructing, making people that are deconstructing wrong, all of those things. So I call those people out, and I actually, I don't get into church drama, I don't get into Christian drama, I don't do it. It's not a worthwhile venture for me. But I will say, so I go into more of why these people from these places of leadership might be saying these things, why these people in leadership and in charge of communities that also fund their own lives and own well-beings and their own families would be saying things about deconstruction right now and how we can ask questions around that. I also mentioned and named the gray space idea that there would be positives and negatives to that, genuine concern for people's lives coming from a person of power in a community that really believes what they say, genuinely worrying and wondering about people's lives and probably salvation and all of that. But also the negatives, the things that they're probably not doing the work on as far as power dynamics, oppression, the ways that they are continuing models and systems of oppression in their own communities and not realizing it, that they may be operating out of some identity characteristics, some power places that they're not privy to, that they're not watching and that they're not paying attention to as they talk so negatively about deconstruction. And mostly how it just undermines and misses the people that are deconstructing, the people like you, the people like me, that are deconstructing and deconditioning what they've been given to believe and what they've been given to believe in a doctrine way, in a spoken, in a taught way, and also in an implied way, things that were given to us in the culture of community. So I just wanted to say that because that's something I really want to run with today. Asking questions isn't dangerous. Telling people from a place of power that they cannot ask questions is extremely dangerous. So there's that one. I also wanted to play with this idea of responsibility. So I've been wanting to talk about responsibility on the pod and in other spaces for a while because it comes up in almost every single session where I sit with people. So responsibility, let's just chat it out for a few minutes because we're here. Responsibility is something that we originally are given and are it's something that we're originally given and we're told that we are responsible for. We're told that it's our job to manage. We're told all of those things. So for example, with a traumatized child, sometimes they are told that they are responsible for the emotions of their adult caregivers, right? So, and that can be implied, that can be explicit, there can be all kinds of different ways. It can be heard, received in all different ways. It doesn't have to be actually said, it can just be implied for it to become like a belief, right? So responsibility, we are given responsibility in all kinds of ways in our conditioning. That traumatized child example being one. We are given responsibility in our conditioning of our beliefs also. So a big piece of that I personally was unpacking the other day was being responsible for catastrophe. I know it sounds dramatic, it sounds melodramatic, it sounds like just kind of bananas, that I would be responsible for catastrophe. And catastrophe meaning, let me be more direct and clear, even what we would call like acts of God, which I think is an inaccurate language too. Crises, natural disasters, that sort of thing, that we would be because of our beliefs. So some of us were given the idea that there's right versus wrong, which morality is a whole nother topic I would love to talk about, but the right versus wrong is very present in me. I know it's very present in a lot of you, that either oring of right versus wrong, and then it bleeds so quickly and so easily to performance, perfectionism, all of those things, right? But responsibility, like in that desire to control, like in that control process of controlling, doing only what is right, oftentimes we're doing that because of a fear of failure, a fear of things going wrong. And what I dug around and found out that there's a fear of failure around it, because I was told that through my own observations and my own actions that I could be in control of whether or not something happens. So let me tell you the story to make it a little bit more clear. My family and I went camping a couple weekends ago. I watched too much Dateline in 2020 as a child, too much news, and I have always been terrified of wildlife. I enjoy backpacking, I enjoy camping, I enjoy hiking, I enjoy being out in nature. It's one of the most refueling things for me. I live in Colorado. It's really important for me to get out in the Rocky Mountains. And we have bears and mountain lions and moose. And it absolutely gets my anxiety going. Part of that anxiety response is that I have heightened reactions, heightened awareness, hypersensitivity to observe. What I am in control of is observing. I observe everything. So like when we go camping, I stay awake all night. This is giving you a little picture of into my neuroses. I stay awake all night listening to every little tiny sound outside of the tent, which you could argue with me, like what animals are out at night? I don't know. Probably nothing that's going to eat me, but I don't know. I listen to every single little tiny sound happening outside of the tent, because that makes me feel like I can then respond or be like in control of whether or not something happens. So you're like, yeah, but like why is it my responsibility to stay up all night and listen, like for each and every sound? Like why, just because I'm the one that observes, why is it my responsibility? Because somewhere I was given that it is my responsibility, like it would be a moral failure of some kind or failure of some kind on my part if I did not keep myself and my family away from or uneaten by a bear. Like that my actions can control whether or not like this happens. and that if it did happen, it would be because I failed and couldn't foresee that it was going to happen. Okay. There's a lot of mix here. So I was given that, let me see how much to go into, but let's just say, as a woman in our culture, I have been told that the world is not a safe place for me. I have also been told that it is my responsibility that even though the world is an unsafe place for me and my body, that it is my responsibility to keep anything harmful from happening to me or my body, right? I've gotten that also in other places and in other ways from family dynamics and that sort of thing, but that the world is unsafe and that it is my responsibility to navigate my safety within an unsafe world. Okay, so there's that piece. There's also a religious piece. Somewhere I was given, and I wouldn't even be able to tell you that I believed this at any point, but somewhere I was given the right versus wrong, and that right is with God, wrong is without God, right? Whatever way that you're given that, or whatever way you understand it, like whether that being sin language, whether that be like any of that, that there's this right versus wrong. And interpreting it that if I do things that are out of alignment with what is right, there are dire consequences, right? Even to the point of catastrophe. So then my actions become that it's so important in my actions that I do what is right and what is good so that I don't cause catastrophe or natural disaster, right? Which is, like I said, not even something that I would ever even believe, but something that comes out from the combination of I'm a woman, I'm responsible for keeping my body safe in an unsafe world, and there's a right versus wrong, there's a sin thing, being sinful, and like all of that causes fallout with God, or God to be angry, or punishment, or something. So then I myself have become somehow responsible for like natural disaster, catastrophe, tragedy, all of that, which I see with a lot of folks in this space starts manifesting as hypervigilance, anxiety, all of that, because we're taking responsibility for all of these things all of the time. So that's just a couple of thoughts I wanted to throw out there today, some things that I've been rattling on. But we can transition now. Let me see who's here.